right? So this is what I was showing you. This is a demonstration here, exploring PowerShell for group management. Let's move ahead. While we are working with Azure Active Directory, we mentioned about number of directories that we can create, number of options that we have over here, right? Along with this, what is the domain that we have created, or what is the domain which is being given to you by Microsoft? So here, if you look at the domain, just go to the hover over the user icon. Right? Similarly, if you go to your environment, there will be some domain over here which is being associated, a dynamic value that it generates over here, which takes your Outlook ID, Live ID, or whatever ID you might have used to create your environment. If you're using your organization account, there you'll see your organization name. Correct? Say abc.com or xyz.com. Now, in real world scenarios, this is what we are supposed to do. We are not supposed to use on Microsoft.com. This is only for the learning purposes. In real world scenarios, you'll have your organization name.com, right? So keeping those kind of requirements in mind, you can create or map custom domains over here. So if you look at your resources within your tenant that you have created, here you can specify your custom domain, right? After you specify this custom domain, you'll have to prove that you are owner of this custom domain, right? And how do we do that? We specify a txt record, we specify mx record over here. So using this txt or mx record, we'll be able to prove that we own this, we own the custom domain, and whatever users that we are adding after there, we'll be able to specify our own custom domains to them. Okay. As far as these custom domains are concerned, how to purchase these custom domains, I hope all of you are aware about it by going to GoDaddy.com or anybody else who's a domain service provider. They will help you with custom domain details. Okay, so here if you see addition of custom domain, you can specify whatever custom domain that you have, what name do you want, abc.com, xyz.com, and once you have added this domain, you'll have to specify this txt record. These custom domains are very, very essential once it comes to mapping with any other pre-existing environment or any of your existing Azure resources that you have, which is say storage account or resources that you have like web applications over here. All these things you can map to your respective domains. This is what I showed you right now. How do you go to your Azure Active Directory, map to your custom domains over here. As far as MX record is concerned, MX record basically is required whenever you are mapping your mailboxes over here. Mailbox extension, that's what is referred as MX. As far as TXT record is concerned, TXT record is only required in context of verifying that you are owner of that DNS. Now in my current scenario, I can't show you a mapping of this custom domain because I don't have a custom domain myself. In your case, if you'll have a pre-existing domain or you can purchase a domain, you can try for these resources here. Okay. Now moving further with the next section here, that is identity protection. So if you recall, in yesterday's discussion, we mentioned about various type of identities, various type of users that we can create. So I was mentioning about identities over here. So if you look at various types of identities, so there are three types of identities. First is cloud identity. Users that we directly create on Azure Active Directory, those will have your cloud identity. Second member that we have is synchronized identity. Users that we synchronize from our on-premises environment. And the third member that you have would be your guest identities. There are three basic identities that we have once it comes to Azure Active Directory, right? Along with this identity, you will have specific roles that is being assigned for each of these users. So if you recall, we have been mentioning about various roles like global administration, you have billing administrator, right? So there are number of Active Directory roles that we have. And based on these Active Directory roles, each of these users or identities that you have created, they will get respective permissions. Okay. So here, if I go to roles and administration, you'll be able to see what are the roles available. And I have just mentioned about two of them. But apart from that, you will see there are a lot of pre-existing roles which are available. Security reader, user administrator, security operator, password administrator. So there are a large number of Active Directory roles which are existing over here. You can also go and create a custom role over here based on your what is the set of permissions that you want to give to the users over here. Now, one thing that we need to understand here is when you are assigning these roles to respective identities, the importance of that identity increases multifold. Correct? The user who has global admin permissions, that user can go and create multiple tenants, right? Access management groups, access information from different resources, create or delete any kind of users, delete or create or delete whatever groups that we have, right? Now, whenever you have such roles being assigned to these identities, it is essential that we protect those identities as well. Because if anybody is able to log in as a global administrator identity, right, it may create havoc in the entire environment, right? So if it is being hacked or it is being taken over by some member, so you need to protect that resource. And that is what is mentioned as identity protection. Okay, so when you are looking at Azure Active Directory identity protection, what are the key entities over here? So here, if you see, it is detection and remediation of identity-based risks. So what are these risks? Nobody else, no unwanted user should be able to get access or get this role of global admin, global reader, right? Get those kind of permissions. If there are any chances of such identities being exposed or being misused? How do we protect that, right? And if it has been hacked for any reason, or it has been misused for any reason, how do we quickly find that out? How do we detect how much of changes has been done, updations, modifications, deletions have been done in right point, right time, and rectify those changes? That is the core purpose once it comes to identity protection. Now, how would you check that if it is being hacked, or how do you check if something is not working as expected? So here, if you see, there are certain parameters being given. So first is a typical travel, something which is not possible. Say for example, a person is based out of US and the same person is logging from India. In so the first login was half an hour ago, another 5 minutes, 10 minutes, the same access is happening from India or Singapore or any other place. That is something which is not possible unless the uh, identity is being leaked or somebody has shared its username and password to somebody else. Okay. Another is anonymous IP address. We are not able to track that IP address. Some unfamiliar sign-in properties. A person who is logging generally between 9:30 to 5:30. Today is logging at 12 o'clock midnight. Or somebody is trying to access these resources on a Sunday. Right? Some of these things which are not typical behavior of that particular user. Right? So those things you can check over here. Any kind of lead credentials. So these are some of the mechanisms through which you can check for identity protection. You can create rules over here, and through these rules we can verify whether the user has been whether there has been a normal access of contents, or there is a change in the pattern or change in the behavior of accessibility. So once you protect these resources, you can use your identity protection mechanism within your Azure Active Directory. Anyone, any questions here in terms of identity protection? So to check for its implementation, you can go to identity protection over here, check for resources available. Now here, if you see, a lot of these steps are being hidden for me or disabled for me. The reason being, whenever you create a free trial subscription, when you create your Azure free trial subscription, you get a Azure Active Directory free trial. We have an option of premium P1 and P2. So if you want to access these features, you'll have to get a premium trial. Right? So if you want to check for these policies, user risk policy, sign-in risk policy, so all these policies you'll have to create over here to make sure you apply these rules that we have been talking about. That is anonymous IP address, unfamiliar sign-in properties. You can assign these, you can specify these risk policies over here. Now, once it comes to risk and you have identified that this is a risk, what is the action that one can take? There are two possible actions. One is you can block the authentication, you can block user access. Second is, say Guru may have traveled to India, possible, correct? So what I can say is, Guru, can you please sign in using a OTP message or a multi-factor authentication? Anybody who is traveling, who has been a constant traveler, in those scenarios, I can just ask for a multi-factor authentication. If you're accessing a web application, I'm still okay with it. But if you are trying to access the Azure portal, if there is any specific application that a person is accessing, I may want to add multi-factor authentication for that user. So that way I can do the identity protection. I can confirm that it's the same user. So this is the significance of identity protection.